So this is for those who are brand new to Blender. I don't know if y'all folks ever got into 3D software or anything of that nature. This is more of like an introduction to the 3D software space by mode of using what is known as Blender. So what is Blender? What is this software that you see here? Well, pretty much it's a 3D software, and I am new to it as well as y'all folks. But I would say I'm a year new to it. So I'm a newbie that's been using it for about a year. So I'm not as new as the very newest person, a newbie or noob, Noob. So I'm not like brand new to it, but I have some experience in learning it and doing research and in trying to figure out how to use it. So what is it? It pretty much is, like I said, a 3D software. It allows you to create 3D graphics, and you can do it in a wide variety of ways. So if y'all folks are interested in creating 3D, anything involving 3D graphics, modeling, you want to perform animation, things of that nature, I highly recommend for y'all folks to go to blender.org, and you should be able to get to this actual location that you see here. And eventually, from reading everything you see on the screen, you can make the choice and decision to choose to download it. That's up to you. 100% up to you. The whole thing about becoming a 3D artist or 3D modeler or 3D computer graphics, more of a person who knows how to use computer graphics, pretty much you have to have some sort of interest in it, and you have to have a goal that you have in mind. So you have to have some sort of intention of creating an end product per se. So that's some of the things that I learned about when I first started, because I had a purpose for using it, because I wanted to try to create something for a particular reason. See, it says right here, it says open source 3D creation. That's basically what Blender is. It provides you an open source tool, and in a software format. You download it onto your Windows computer, your if you have a Linux computer, or you have more of like an Apple Macintosh based type of computer, you're going to load it onto that computer, and once you get it on your computer, you'll be able to access the interface and access the software that Blender provides. If you don't do that, you're just going to pretty much be like a passive observer of what other people are creating on YouTube per se, or whatever case may be, if you're interested in the field but you're not really wanting to tackle it. So that's that part. So right here, it's free to use for any purpose, and that's what makes Blender really, really intriguing to me. And that's what drew me in a little bit more than trying to use other software that's out there. There's tons of software out there that can provide you the same similar tools, the same similar products, the same similar output that you can get, or product or production that you can get from using 3D assets and using 3D anything involved in computer graphics. But not many of them are free, 100% free. Plus, you can use Blender to create what is known as commercial projects. So you can actually earn off of what you created from Blender, as long as everything you created in it, you own that content, or you got the rights to use it. So that's another part about Blender that makes it really awesome. And also, as an open source, you can do a lot with it. So right here it says about. So you want to break this down, just read this little detail. It says Blender is a free and open source 3D creation suite. It supports the entirety of the 3D pipeline, from modeling, rigging, animation, simulation, rendering, compositing, and motion tracking, video editing, and also 2D animation pipeline. Now, it used to have a gaming platform type of creation side to it, where you can actually create games, but I believe in the most recent Blender 2.8 version, they pretty much eliminated that side of it, and I think they wanted to focus more on people who are interested in the creativity of modeling, rigging, animation, stuff like that. Or if you wanted to get into the motion tracking stuff with your videos, you want to like do stuff like Adobe After Effects can do after you create a video, you want to apply more special effects to it, stuff like that. Blender can do that kind of stuff. And you can also now create 2D animations. So using many different facets and different, how would you say, modules that's built into Blender, you can utilize them for particular purposes. So that's the whole thing about Blender. If you don't have a purpose in learning it, and you don't have something in mind that you want to create, if you don't have anything in mind as an output or a product that you want to get out of Blender, then jumping into it head first, you're probably not going to learn that much starting out. So you have to have a desire and a goal in mind before you get into it. So that's one of the things. Now the other thing, as a newbie to 3D, for myself, I'm about 2 years or so as a newbie into 3D graphics, not just Blender, because I wanted to get interested in 3D graphics first before I got into and dove into Blender. So if you're a newbie to 3D graphics, what I recommend for y'all folks to do is not necessarily download Blender right away. What you want to do is dig into Google and also through YouTube and start learning about 3D graphics. So you can type in 3D graphics per se, and then dig into what the history is behind it, find out everything you can find out and learn about 3D graphics that will assist you when you move and merge into trying to learn a software package or a software suite for 3D like Blender. So this is the part that a lot of people try to skip and bypass, or they just totally ignorant to the fact that this is what you have to do. Now if you go to school for 3D graphics, obviously this is the element that they're going to tie into your mind and through the required courses and course material that you have to go and learn. Now me per se, I never got into 3D graphics. I'm not a 3D graphics student on the side of going to school. I never went to school for it. I'm self-taught and self-trained, so I learned everything online using a computer. Basically going on my computer, going onto Google and learning day in and day out. Like I said, since about 2 years or so ago is when I got into it. Just from my own interest, I decided one day, hey, this looks great. These things that they're creating on the internet and on YouTube look awesome. I want to get into it and try to learn. So that's what I decided to do. Now, as a research, more of a person, I wouldn't claim to be a research expert, but I'm more of like a research analyst type of person. Ever since I was a kid, I love to do research. So that's my skill per se that I bring to the table and I bring to the online world. I love researching material. I love researching information. I love learning. Ever since I picked up my first ever Encyclopedia Britannica. So let's go to Wikipedia talking about that, because Wikipedia is very similar to an encyclopedia, and that's where I learned a lot of stuff from, and I'm able to gain more knowledge and pretty much build a knowledge base in my mind covering any subject. And this is the kind of thing that I recommend for other people who are into 3D or any other technology based knowledge or whatever you want to learn. I highly recommend for y'all folks to dive into any resource, most definitely Wikipedia, to find the information that you're looking for and cross-reference that data and find every possible way of learning it. And the more you do that, you can become self-taught as well. You don't necessarily have to go to school to learn this stuff. You can teach yourself. It takes some time because you're not going to have a course and direction. You're not going to have more of a guide that's helping you to get there. You're going to have to figure out the guides yourself. So you're going to have to find the guides. You're going to have to find the material. You're going to have to find the sources and resources yourself. That's what takes a lot of time. That's why some people who are picking up Blender and trying to learn Blender on their own, it might take them more time than the other person besides them or on the side of them. Maybe their friend is interested and their friend got more free time to do it. It's going to take that friend probably a shorter time if they have a background in computer graphics. You know what I'm saying? But if you have no background in it, obviously it's going to take you much more longer to grasp the knowledge and to grasp the little information points that you need to understand in order to even be able to look at Blender the way that they look at it and be able to tackle certain things and get by, when it comes to certain things that seem difficult to understand. So here we go. We over on Wikipedia. Got that other horse beat down to death. We're into 3D graphics, not a real physical dead horse, obviously. So we're into 3D computer graphics on Wikipedia, and let's try to break down a little bit of what it is that 3D graphics is about. So 3D graphics is, or the three-dimensional computer graphics are graphics that use a three-dimensional representation of geometric data. So what does that mean when you break it down? in the 3D plane of view, you're going to be able to represent it in a geographic way using data onto the screen. So the data that's being implemented onto the screen is going to be pretty much displayed in a way where you can visually see and sense the graphic of 3D nature. So you can see height, depth, width, length, all of those differing geometric type of shapes or contours and design. So you get to see it, and it's kind of coming at you. That's how 3D works. It uses depth, length, height, width, and it also uses lighting. It uses more of like a sensory type of perception. So it enhances your ability to sense what's visually appealing on the screen or not. So if you're putting something out there that's 2D, you're not going to see all of the dimensionality coming out, obviously. Now, with computer graphics, they play around with the pixels on the screen. So you got to get used to understanding how the pixels are working on the screen in order for you to manipulate those pixels, obviously. So there's one thing about computer graphics that I learned that is very similar to more like you trying to draw something on a piece of paper. So you can use on a piece of paper a pen or a pencil to draw. The difference in the computer graphics world is that you're using your mouse, obviously, or you're using a touch screen. But the similarities are very similar in terms of once you start to understand how to manipulate the pixel or how to manipulate the actual pen ink or pencil lead, then you start to be able to bring out the dimensionality on the screen. So you just have to make the conversion in your mind to see how the computer graphics world works in terms of using that pointer, using that I guess they call it a mouse. You know, you see this little mouse pointer. You have to understand how to make that bridge from the real world to the digital world. Once you do that and you start to break down a lot of this terminology, then a lot of this stuff starts to make more sense. And that's where the world of Blender will start to illuminate a little bit more in your mind. You start to visually sense and see what you're actually able to do and capable to do. Without understanding that it's very similar to paper and pen when you're using your mouse or a touch screen, then making that bridge is very hard to do. So I just wanted to talk about that because it took me some time to understand how computer graphics works and the fact that it's not that complicated. It's really not that complicated, but in our minds we may think that it's very complicated because our minds is telling us that we're very far from duplicating what we see that other people can do with it. So our minds create the barrier, but I'm just trying to help y'all folks to remove that barrier, because once you understand how to use your mouse and how to use the touchscreen, if you're using a touchscreen to control it, then it starts to change your perspective and you start to see much more capabilities that you can actually apply to it. You can take your creativity and literally pour what you have on the real world on paper onto the screen. And that's what Blender does. Blender gives you the ability to transition from the real world to the digital world, all your ideas and your creativity, and it's pretty powerful. And I can give some examples, but all y'all guys got to do, and gals, if you're watching, let me go to YouTube, is look up on YouTube and start searching. Put Blender, something like Blender artist. Alright folks, so we're back, and I do apologize for that interruption. That really was kind of messed up, but it's gonna happen because my computer really does suck. I talk about that a lot. Alright folks, so yes, I am glad to be back. Alright, so computer graphics. Looks like Wikipedia is asking for help. If y'all folks love Wikipedia like I do, you got some money, toss it at them. That'll be awesome. They need donations. So I'm gonna get into that eventually once I get a chance. I like to donate to Wikipedia because it helped me a lot in terms of learning information. So now we're back, and what I was talking about, go onto YouTube. If my computer freezes, I really do apologize, but let's see what it does. I don't think it's gonna freeze this time. So go onto YouTube, look up Blender art. That's what I meant to say. I looked back on the live session and that was the part that ended briefly and abruptly, actually. So Blender art or Blender artist, and that's what I recommend for y'all folks to do, like I said, and you'll start to see great deal of stuff that people have created. Just by looking on the side of the screen, you can see and sense stuff. You don't even have to click on any of the videos, and you'll be able to see the ideas and the creativity unleashed by a lot of people. Whether they created it themselves or they borrowed 3D models from other 3D artists, it is doable, it's possible, and you can learn how to do it yourself as well. And you can go from scratch to the point where you can 3D sculpt stuff. Now, talking about 3D sculpting, I'm not the best at it. I've tried it a few times, literally tried it maybe 2 or 3 times, and didn't really like to sculpt in 3D. But I do like to play around with 3D art, but I'm more of the type of person who wants to learn a lot of these auto character generator tools like MakeHuman. So if you're like myself, you don't care too much about creating from scratch, you can use these character generator software, which is really dope. They have this one called Daz, D-A-Z. This one is known as MakeHuman Community. It's kind of confusing starting out because you may not know where to go. If you go here and you try to go to downloads, you may not know exactly what to do. So I create videos. There's a lot of 3D artists and 3D modelers who use this software on YouTube. So I recommend for y'all folks to type in MakeHuman and also type in like MakeHuman 3D or something like that on YouTube, and you should be able to find tutorials that are out there. I don't know how many of the more recent updates that have been put out there in terms of MakeHuman. I don't know how many artists are out there doing that, 3D artists or 3D modelers, but I know I cover it a great deal. I try to go in and dig in and try to help people to understand some of the stuff that I learned in the recent last 2 years or so, because I started with MakeHuman before I got into using Blender, and I learned a lot about how to use it and how to get into the updates, how to play around with the differing 3D asset tools and software suite capabilities it has. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, you can dig in, and as you can see, it's not really too straightforward. It will be kind of tough starting out for you to figure out how to get it onto Blender in terms of your 3D models that you can create from MakeHuman, because you have to create it on a separate 3D software suite that they create to generate the character, and then you can merge it onto Blender. But depending on what type of version that you're using of MakeHuman, it may not work out the way that you want it. So if you say you wanted to learn the newest one, the latest one, then the previous tutorial sessions that you find on YouTube may not help you for it. So hopefully you can find something that's more updated. So let's type in Daz. This is another character generator here. The one that you just seen, MakeHuman, is not showing too much visual, which I hope they can go into more visual so people can make a decision of joining it faster than just clicking on download screens and stuff like that and trying to go to stuff like, that's not that visual if they're brand new to it as a newbie. But I really haven't used this much. I only used it for one particular day. And the reason why I don't use this is because there's a lot of different content that you're going to have to get for paid version. There's a lot of paid type of software that's built into it. If you want more assets, say you wanted to enhance your assets and get better assets from the more of the free stuff that they offer free stuff as well. If you want like enhanced graphics, enhanced assets, 3D assets, clothing, uniforms, maybe if you're doing some sort of a futuristic stuff with weaponry or aircraft, stuff like that, anything that you're looking for in 3D asset form, some of the stuff is going to cost you, more than obviously the free version. So that's why I don't choose to use that stuff. You can use Daz, you can use Autodesk Character Generator. I talked about this in previous video sessions. Let's see, Character Generator. And there's another one that was part of Adobe, which Adobe is eventually going to get rid of it. It's known as Fuse, F-U-S-E, but I'll show y'all folks that as well very soon. But this one is pretty cool. This is free by Autodesk. Most of the stuff on Autodesk is paid, but this one happens to be free, and it was pretty interesting generating characters from this. So that's Autodesk Character Generator. Just type that into Google and you should be able to get to this. That's that. Fuse, let's do Fuse, also known as Mixamo Fuse, but you're probably gonna have to type in Fuse 3D because it has not necessarily been ended, but Adobe's eventually going to end it on their platform, but it's available on the Steam platform. If y'all folks never heard of Steam, Steam is like more of a gaming platform. So this is the original owner of Fuse, known as Mixamo, and eventually Adobe took them over, but they also, I believe, got bought out to some degree, partly by Steam, or maybe they joined the Steam platform before they got bought out by Adobe. I'm not sure to that effect, but the fact that it's still available on Steam is pretty powerful, pretty awesome, because it's free on Steam. With Adobe, I think you had to have an Adobe Creative Cloud account in order to access the Adobe Fuse. They said that it was free. I don't know if it's free or it was free on Adobe, but that's neither here nor there because that's going away, and eventually I don't know if they're gonna open up the capabilities into some other format in order to generate more like 3D characters generated by Adobe, but I'm not sure what they choose to do. So here it is right here, Fuse. This is really dope. So like I said, a lot of my videos I covered on these differing subjects, starting out as a 3D novice and 3D noob, since I don't know how to create these characters myself and generate the graphics. I go into using these tools, and they were able to help me to understand and learn the basics to 3D, because you got to know some of the basics to merge these things and pipeline them from one software to the next software. You have to learn some of the basics to understanding the textures. The textures is where you can pretty much apply a lot of the enhanced graphics, like the coloring that you see, the texture of the skin, maybe some outfits that you're trying to apply, clothing that you're trying to apply, anything that is in a graphical nature that's going to enhance the 3D model from its bare bone, maybe the nude, naked mode or version of what it's in. So, this is the kind of stuff that helped me to learn those basics. And once I started to learn those basics, I was able to apply that knowledge once I got into using Blender. And it gave me an upper hand in Blender because I didn't have to learn it before, right when I got to Blender as a newbie. I already knew how to use 3D graphics to some degree because of these software, because of understanding how to utilize them and then manipulate them and move them from one software to the next software. So that's that kind of stuff. If you're brand new to Blender, I highly recommend for y'all folks to try to mess with these things if you're not interested in learning how to create it yourself. For those who want to create stuff themselves, then going this course in the direction of doing the research and digging to find out the differing information you're going to need to apply for that knowledge base to be absorbed and to be expressed will make sense. So going into Wikipedia and onto Google, onto YouTube, cross-referencing, like I said, that information is really important to gather and pick up and then move on to the next point. Now, some people may not know what to look for. So let's go on to, let's say we'll try to go on to Blender itself. So I'm going to try to run up Blender. Hopefully my computer doesn't freeze in the process. It may freeze because I'm doing a live stream and I'm doing multiple things on my computer, and my computer really does suck bad. So hopefully that new computer is coming in the future. My car just recently broke down, so it's not coming anytime soon. The holidays is on the way. So like I said, it's not coming anytime soon. So maybe next year, 2020, I should be able to get that new computer up and running. So Blender's starting out right now. This is Blender version 2.80. This is the most stable version of Blender. When you first get Blender up and running, you're going to notice different things, but I'm not going to talk too much about everything that you see on the screen. Obviously, you're going to get the splash screen, and it tells you the version of Blender. This is the spring character, which is a character that the Blender artist, official 3D artist in the Blender, more of the Blender team and the organization part inside of Blender, they created her, and they created a really nice short film for people to be inspired about this Blender 2.8. This is one of the most latest releases. It's the best by far release that Blender ever launched because it has so many functionalities and capabilities that it's mind-blowing what you can do with it. Now if you're brand new to it, you're brand new to Blender, brand new to 3D graphics, as a newly, trying to be sprouting 3D artist or learning 3D artist or whatever, or 3D modeler / animator, then this is something that you got to get familiar with, which is the Blender splash screen / viewport. So that's what you're going to notice. You're going to see every time you launch Blender. Over here, you're going to see recent files. You're going to see new file. You're going to see the ability to open up or recover last session file option, and then you have release notes and development fund. So if you become professed in Blender or experienced in any way, and you start to learn that Blender is benefiting you, I highly recommend for you to help them by funding them back. That's this development fund button at the bottom. You click it, it takes you to an online web browser based side of Blender where you can basically donate to them. Since it's a free and open source software, it's not 100% free in terms of the whole of the Blender's organization and entity. They need money, they need funding to get Blender to stay as stable as possible, also to get Blender updated and to keep launching the benefits for the Blender community, which is the Blender artists and 3D animators, designers, whoever chooses to become part of Blender, to help us in general, the newbies and all the people who are more experienced. They need the funding that we can offer them, basically through donations or whatever we can do in a format of sending them funds. So in return, we get higher and higher and higher accessibility to the tooling, and also the tools get better and better and better over the years. So right now, y'all folks are seeing and witnessing what is the benefits of many years of people doing that. So now I just clicked off the splash screen. I hit the left click mouse button, and that starts my more of the intro to what you see here, which is the Blender viewport. So you get the access to the Blender viewport once you click anywhere outside of the splash screen, and from there, that's where your adventures start to become more pronounced, and you start to learn or start to realize that you don't know anything and you're not sure what to do. But like I said, if you do all that precursor stuff that I talked about, once you get onto Blender, you'll start to have a little bit more confidence in what you want to produce in terms of what you're looking to do with it. Because if you don't know what you want to do with it, obviously learning how to use it won't make any sense, obviously, right? So what do I want to do with it? That's where you start to see these tabs, and these tabs are indicators to the viewer or the 3D artist or modeler in terms of what he wants to do or she wants to do. So say I wanted to just use the regular layout. That's the default tab right now. All this stuff might change over time, which is something that they do all the time. They change the user interface, or that's basically what this is, the user interface and the viewport. So a lot of these things will change, but what will remain the same is pretty much your purpose for using it. So you're always going to have a purpose, hopefully, before you upload anything into it, before you download anything from it. You want to have a purpose. So say you want to go to modeling. All right, so we go and we switch over to the modeling tab, or sculpting. We switch over to the sculpting tab. None of these tabs will make sense if you have no purpose for using it. So I'm not into sculpting, so maybe I want to delete the tab. So I go and I right click it and delete, and I got rid of the sculpting tab. Now all of this stuff can be fixed and corrected. If you say you wanted to delete all these things and you don't need this, you don't need that, we're always going to need rendering. I'm going to talk about all these differing tabs as time goes along, as I choose to use them, or whatever the case may be. Say I didn't want texture paint, say I didn't want UV editing, say I didn't want shading, animation, or whatever. You can pretty much customize Blender how you choose. That's one of the powers behind Blender and behind the development process. They gave us the ability as the creator to customize it how we want to use it and how we want it to function for ourselves. So if you keep that in mind, besides staring at the grid that you see here and the red line and green line, which is pretty much the X and Y axis, or trying to figure out why the Z axis is not visible, which you see over here, they have these gizmo things, you have all these little icons, and it may be bizarre to you starting out from scratch. besides staring at that stuff, besides looking at the right side panel and saying to yourself, what the hell is this? Besides all that, you can literally customize everything. That's one of the powers about Blender. So say I wanted to make these different things disappear and reappear, I'm going to use what is known as hotkeys and stuff like that. So right now I'm making things disappear and reappear, as you can see. That is up to you as you choose to use it and you start to learn the interface. You can play around with shading. Once you learn what shading is all about as a 3D artist and graphic designer or a 3D modeler slash animator, then you'll start to get into using the shader options, things like that. But before all that, you're probably going to say to yourself, how do I manipulate the mouse? How do I use it like it's a pencil? How do I use it like it's like I'm an artist? Or, you know, how do I sketch stuff into the screen? So that's one of the things you're going to start to think about. How do I navigate? How do I move things from place to place? So it's going to take you some time, but 9 times out of 10, you're going to jump onto YouTube once you get into a stumbling point and you don't see yourself being able to go from moving this to anything else. You're going to try to look for videos, and those videos should help you to get to it, to that point, right? But there's more to Blender besides that. So besides all of these things that I talked about and mentioned, which are the stumbling blocks that keep people from learning it, what I want y'all folks to realize is you can go up here to the upper left area where it says File, Edit, Render, Window, and Help. And you can jump into the research side as a research analyst type like myself did when I first got Blender. So I highly recommend for y'all folks to do that instead of staring at the screen, getting puzzled and getting frustrated, or digging into YouTube trying to find random videos where every other average Joe or somebody who's advanced in it will try to help you, but you'll still be missing learning points where you needed to learn something basic or something more advanced at that point in time, because you don't have a straight course of direction to learn it. So just go to the help section you see right there and then click on manual. You can also click on tutorials, but I highly recommend for you to click on manual, and that will get you to get started with that version of Blender. So right now it brings me to an online web browser, and then you read the details as per what you see on the screen. So you got Blender 2.8 reference manual, and you go and dig into this stuff. You really want to dig your teeth into it and try to learn things step by step. Don't go and bypass stuff. Learn every little detail. Try to dig into every little thing that you can, slowly but surely. And the reason why it's, you know, put here is for us to learn. And I'll be right back. Hold on one second. I got a call. Hold on one second. What's up, booby? Hey, babe. I'm doing a live stream. Can I talk to you when you get home? All right, babe. Thanks. All right, so yeah, pretty much you want to get into this reference manual. It's really, really key. If you do the research, like I said, you go onto Google, you learn the basics of computer graphics. Once you get into that, double back on this, learn this part, and dig your teeth in. So it says about Blender, you can dig into that. Configuring Blender, dig into that. Installing Blender, if you have problems installing Blender on your machine, dig into that right there. Boom. So I'm gonna right click and open that tab, and this information is gonna help you for sure to get past a lot of the stumbling blocks that people experience, because we're dealing with a computer type of software. So this is computer graphics software, and in anything dealing with 3D is going to require you to have a higher level of graphics capability. So your video card, say you have an NVIDIA, whatever type of video card that you have, a graphics card on your computer, it's going to need to be upgraded as high as you can actually upgrade it within your budget. Try to get it up to a higher level. You want to upgrade your computer, you want to get a better computer. Like my computer's freezing right now. I have a gaming computer and it's still freezing. I have a pretty decent NVIDIA graphics card. It's like NVIDIA 970, which is somewhat lower than a lot of the newer stuff, but it's still not at the lowest level that it could be. So it's somewhere in the mid-range of graphics in terms of what's capable today, what we could do. So if you think along those lines and you start to upgrade, you go with, it says minimum and recommended requirements. Let's try that. Blender has a minimum and recommended requirements. So you go in and click on those type of links and you figure out what is required. It says hardware requirements, Blender 2.8, and then it has the minimum, has recommended, and has optimal. Optimal would be 64-bit 8-core CPU, 32 gigabytes of RAM. My computer has 8 gigabytes of RAM, so I'm not at the optimal level, obviously. A full HD display, 3-button mouse and pen plus tablet, and graphics card with at least 12 gigs of RAM. So that's optimal, all the way up super high. Mine's is somewhere mid-range. Well, my RAM is low, which could be the reason why it's actually freezing, why the computer's freezing. Mine's at 8 gigs of RAM, but I think it's because of Windows as well, and this particular type of computer, it has some defects and it's just not working the way it should. So this is the kind of stuff that you really want to dig into before you go into, ripping your hair out to you're saying to yourself, man, I can't get Blender to work on my computer, or whatever the case may be. Well, you look at this stuff, at least bare minimum get the recommended, but you want to try to reach for, your goal should be to reach for the optimal and beyond. And that's one of the things I'm going to try to do as I save my money and I invest my money into the future of trying to get into 3D graphics and 3D design, 3D animation, etc. My end goal per se is to become more of a 3D artist, which I don't consider myself to be a 3D artist yet. I'm more of a learned type of person. I'm learning, I'm picking up knowledge base, and I'm trying to redisplay that knowledge as I see fit onto the online world so people can see the course of direction of what I've had to do to get there, so I can help more people around the planet to also be able to do it as well. So that's that part. So there you go. So hopefully this helps you. Starting out from Blender 2.8 reference manual, you can move further. If you don't and you bypass this stuff, obviously you're going to be really frustrated on so many levels because you did not do the research, dig into it to figure out what you need to have, at least bare minimum, for your computer to work in conjunction with the compatibility of Blender software. Because Blender keeps upgrading, there's going to be higher and higher requirements. If you want to become a 3D animator, I know for sure that you're going to have a larger scale, more of like a capacity on your computer. So your computer has to have much more capacity to be able to handle the data that's going to be needed. And you're also going to have to maybe go for what is known as cloud-based storage. So you're going to have to connect with higher end cloud-based storage, and also known as render farms. So with creating 3D graphics, there's what is known as rendering. So you're going to have to understand how to be able to render on a larger scale so you can get the graphics to actually work better. Some people's computers may not be able to handle all of the graphics that's being poured into, per se, an animation. So say you're trying to create an animation project, right? You got everything set up, Blender looks great, you got it, you're trying to play the animation, it may freeze frame every now and then or whatever, it may display something that looks dope to you, but the full-scale project may not be able to be done because you don't understand that part of it. You don't know that the rendering side requires tons of data to be stored in what is known as a render farm. So that's the kind of stuff I learned about, and I know that's one of my stumbling blocks and something that's stopping me from learning how to create a full-scaled like animated short film or something like that. Even more of an intro. Say I wanted to create an intro, it's going to slow me down because I don't have that access to a render farm and that ability to get to that point. So these are the kind of things that you're going to run into as time goes along. And if you don't have that access, if you don't invest into that knowledge base, if you don't dig into that, then using Blender is going to be more of a limitation at a certain point. All of these subject matters are great to learn, but like I said, you want to go and find out what end product you want and what you're trying to produce out of it. Once you got that project, that purpose in mind of what kind of project you're trying to create, then you want to find out what is your capabilities, how far can I take my machine to generate that kind of product and that output. So without knowing that stuff, you're going to pretty much be lost in the sauce and you're not going to go that far. So I just wanted y'all folks to know that part, because that's more coming towards the tail end of a project that you're trying to create, and you're saying to yourself, why this thing is not working? Why does my computer keep freezing? Why this is not working? Why that? I have so much experience on that end of the failed side of Blender within my first year, because I felt like I can create something out of my auto-generated characters, and then I find out they're just not going to where I want them to go. I'm not getting them there. You know what I'm saying? No matter how many hours I studied and watched so many videos, I watched over thousands and thousands of videos on YouTube, it's still a stumping block or a stopping point, getting stumped, you know, in different points. So there you go with that. I just wanted to put that out there for those who are already knowledgeable in Blender and they trying to figure out why stuff is not working for themselves. So if you get into this manual stuff, you can really go further. Now let's go into YouTube and look up some stuff that could help you as well, because YouTube is where I was able to learn and go further with Blender. So besides learning what Blender is, besides learning how the viewport works, besides, you know, becoming the research analyst type of person, once you got all the info that you need, now you have to put it into action. So in order to put some of this stuff to action, you got to, you know, pretty much reference other people. So you got to go back and forth and find out how other people were able to pull off a certain thing, because they're the ones who know how to do it. You know, not every little thing in detail that you're going to research, you're going to find, you know, the exact way, because some people are unique to what they can do. Like this person known as Blender Guru, he's unique to what is known as creating materials, creating photorealistic effects, bringing out the best in your render. If you want to create a high scale level render quality, stuff like that, he really is good at that kind of stuff. He actually dedicated a website to it. He's almost at 1 million subscribers, Blender Guru. And the reason being is because he really dug his teeth into his research. He really did bring that into activity and bring it onto the world stage, and supplied a great many people around the planet with his useful tutorials and stuff like that. So I highly recommend for y'all folks to dig into his videos. He has tons of videos from novice to some of them look advanced, you know, but he starts out with a lot of novice stuff, like how to create a really nice donut, you know. And people, you know, after a while they kind of like say to themselves, well, I don't want to create a donut, I want to go further past the donut. Well, he's not the only one. There's tons of other people who can help you, and you can go into doing other things. So if you want to learn the most that you can learn out of rendering, how to create really nice node-based connections and things like that to get high quality results, how to use materials, how to really pretty much make the best out of your novice use of Blender, I highly recommend for you to go to Blender Guru, and he teaches on a novice level to intermediate level for sure, and even some stuff is going to be advanced to the average person. For me, a lot of his stuff is advanced because I'm still new, and my newbie level is compared to these advanced guys is very, very low, because I really don't like getting into the shaders and the node editor area of Blender, and that's where a lot of the advanced stuff exists. I'm pretty good at everything else. It's really easy to move a slider button, or to navigate to some sort of a module and activate a button or stuff like that, which a lot of inside Blender you're going to be doing. But other than that, to create multiple nodes and interconnect them and know what the nodes are going to do, like you see right here, how to add easy grunge in Blender. And then you see right here on the screen, he has all these different nodes making node connections. Well, that's not something that I'm great at. I'm not great at UV mapping. So UV deals with XY coordinate and how that graphic is going to be implemented on the XY coordinate to 3D coordinate plane system. So if you look up what UV means, then you'll start to understand some of that stuff. The terminology in 3D is one of the things that slows people down. So that's why I recommended to dig and do the research on different things. So when you come across certain stuff through the Blender reference and you start finding words and terminology that you don't understand, I highly recommend for y'all folks to dig and research those terms. You double back on Google, double back in YouTube, and you'll start to find videos where people know how to use it and how to do it.